And we're back. So, Tamra Lampkey is pretty awesome. She's a Sin City native who wandered into the SSA at UNLV one day and never quite wandered out. As a former vice president of SSA at UNLV, she pushed for an open dialogue with believers, critical thinking, and a heavy focus on altruism and charity. As of the spring 2014 semester, the SSA at UNLV has successfully co-hosted a viewing of the Unbelievers with Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss and implemented the SSA at UNLV podcast. She currently works as a production assistant for Scooterbay Publishing. And I got it.
Yay, technical difficulties already.
And without further ado, here's Tamra Lampkey.
As you can tell, this is already kind of starting off on a... Okay, so I have a bit of a confession. When I was originally asked to do this, I was asked to do this because our former president, James Nash, did such a good job at leadership transitions. I was confused. I wondered why I was asked to do the speech when James was the one who had done such a great job at all former leadership transitions. However, he is quite the pain, so I stepped up to the plate and did volunteer to do the speech today on leadership transitions. Now, so just bear with me. Instead of a real introduction or going on with PowerPoints and lists, we're gonna start by assuming a lot. In fact, this entire presentation is going to be a hypothetical. So let's start from the beginning. Good leadership transition starts by being elected as a leader. So, you have been elected as president. Good job. So what now? The very first thing you need to do as a president, or even if you are implementing the group and obviously acting as president by starting the group, is you have to learn your responsibilities. This is absolutely critical. Okay, the best way to learn your responsibilities is to speak at length with the outgoing president. Or, if you are just starting, to get highly involved with the SSA website. There is a ton of resources about starting a group, running a group, leadership transitions and delegation, all within the resources. I highly recommend going there. Okay, so you speak at length with the outgoing president. Here are some questions you might want to ask. What did they do? How did they do it? What were their strengths and their weaknesses? Or I'm sorry, as our favorite buzzword is, what were their opportunities to improve? What were they proud of, and what were the things that they could change? Now, the reason that you want to ask these questions and have a formal sit-down powwow with the president is, one, it does facilitate a very, very definite endpoint and a very obvious transition point from the old leader to the new leader. The reasons why you want to do this or you can quickly identify efficient methods of working with and motivating your group. You figure out what works and what doesn't work. You get an idea of how you can make your mark on your presidency, what things from their leadership period that you want to keep, things that you want to innovate, things you want to change. You kind of get a very big idea of what your job is as a whole. Now, once you kind of have your powwow, you kind of have the overall general speech, you say your goodbyes, you want to finish your meeting by obtaining all relevant and potentially relevant documentation from the outgoing president. The things up from this are contacts for off-campus secular groups, potential advisors and sponsors, charities, and other affiliated student groups. The reason why these kinds of contacts are important are these are your local resources for helping your group out. These are local student groups for joint co-ed events. And you want to obtain all records of attendance, receipts, group accounts, mailing lists, past group budgets, anything and everything. Documentation is your lifeline. If you don't have a record of what you've done in the past, you're not really going to have a good idea of what you're going to be doing in the future. Another thing that is probably good to get from the outgoing president is any and all copies of officer handbooks that may exist for the group. So now that you have an idea of what you are in for, you're going to want to know who is coming along with you for the ride. This is where it's very, very, very important to learn the basic roles of your other officers. The reason why you want to know the basic roles for your officers is if you can understand how your group works cohesively, you can better understand which officers can step in for another officer should that responsibility or an emergency come up. So you're going to want to learn what positions currently exist and what are are all needs being met by these positions. If not, then you need to create new roles for any currently unmet needs and future goals for the group. Also, how do your officers work together? There's a lot to consider. You want to consider how they get into contact with each other. What's the culture like? How are you guys going to run meetings? What are the strengths and weaknesses of your individual officers? Also, once again, who can fill in for any officer should an emergency arise? Which officers have overlapping responsibilities? It's really important because you're going to have kind of different areas and like different teams of officers for different responsibilities. Now, this is kind of a big thing. This is where you really have to step back and you can't let your ego be bigger than the group. Delegate responsibility. I cannot say this enough. You are not an island. You can run a group on your own for maybe a year, if you're lucky. 2, if you're a superhero. After that, stress, circumstances, and other obstacles will drain you and sap your motivation. If you want your group to last, you need help. Again, you are not an island. You are not on your own. You have help. Trust your officers. Now, here are some officer positions to consider for your group. These are the amount of officers that the SSA UNLV currently has. So we have our president. He serves as, or our current president serves as the inspiration for the group. His job basically is he sets the vision for the group. He creates goals for the year, whether those are public events, social events, volunteer work, activism. He runs the general meetings. He covers the announcements, discussion topics, any special events that might be going on at these meetings, whether they're scavenger hunts or stuff. He has them organized, and he functions as the face of the group. We also have a vice president. This position, this is my former position, functions as the overseer. In my personal opinion, this is the hardest job. And it is the most necessary job of any of the officers that I'm going to suggest you guys implement. The basic undertitle for the vice president is they are the overseer. They handle all compliance issues among the group. We play mediator should issues between members arise. Anytime that any behavioral issues need to come up, the vice president steps in and handles any potential punishments or any other ameliorating circumstances. Also, they ensure each officer is meeting goals and steps in should an officer be unable to perform any responsibilities, temporary or otherwise. We actually had an incident this semester where we had one of our officers who was unable to complete, there was a behavioral issue and he had to step down, and I had to step up and step in as our public events / PR officer. I all of a sudden had to jump in and help plan and co-host Richard Dawkins coming to our campus, and then help market that, help promote it. And I'm not going to lie, I had no idea what I was doing. I just jumped into the gun with what resources I had and went for it, and we successfully co-hosted it. These are the kinds of things the vice president does. So we also have our treasurer. Our treasurer maintains any financial records regarding payments made, membership dues, and monthly budgets, and then also handles all financial transactions. Then you have the secretary, which maintains all other records besides financial records, such as attendance, events reports, other contact information, and mailing list. The secretary also acts as a contact point for the group by handling any group email accounts and passing along any relevant information to the other officers. We have 2 more established positions. Sometimes it's divided into 3. We also have our public events / public relations officer. The public events officer handles all logistics for public events, such as speaking events, and the PR also handles tabling and publicity events. They function as the marketing exec for the group. Often, they are in charge of all social media accounts. Currently, we do have a separate PR officer and a public events officer. The public events handles choosing the speaker, getting funding for the speaker, making sure all lodgings are complete, ensuring that they're picked up, that the event itself runs well, handling logistics such as setting up venues. PR serves an additional event such as increasing membership, handling tabling events, marketing, posters. Often they run our Twitter or our Facebook pages. And then there is one relatively easy but incredibly important final officer position that we have, and that is member events. The difference between public events and member events is that public events are for who we are representing ourselves to the public. Member events are social activities for our members. They create social events for the group, such as potlucks, parties, or laser tag. But the reason why these events are very important are because it allows us to bond and fraternize in an environment that is not necessarily entirely based on our secular interests. It allows us to bond further in ways, in similar interests that have nothing to do with the group. It makes us more cohesive. Also, you do have the option of further appointed positions such as historian, webmaster, media director, blah, 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 blah. The benefit of these appointed positions are if you have any potential leaders who want to step up but they didn't make the cut as an officer-elect, you can appoint them to these positions so that they can get leadership experience without having to be elected. And the next time an election is run, hopefully they'll have presenting themselves as a possible officer. Great, so the group is running well, everything's going great, and goals are being met. Fantastic. Hopefully by now, you have managed to hold on to your passion and motivation for the cause. Here's what you might have been doing while everything is happening. Basically, these are general tips for while you're running a group. Your officers have been documenting their progress, right? Preferably in an online medium everybody has access to. Google Drives, Facebook groups, other accounts. These are all great ways to store your information. I'm entirely pro keeping all documentation online with open transparency for everyone, as opposed to having hard copy binders about everyone's responsibilities and maintaining all paper records. If you have it online, it's probably backed up and everybody can look at anything all the time without having to hand off hard copies. Hopefully, you've been holding true to your group's core values. A group's core values are the essence of who the group is. You have been fostering the group's identity by taking photos and fighting for the cause, right? Your cause is anything that unites your group. It's the reason you exist in the first place. Now, obviously, with us being a secular student alliance, secularism is a big goal. However, there's many defining factors in secularism. Are you for inclusive thought? Are you for purely activism? The biggest thing that SSA at UNLV stands for is critical thinking. We are going to respect a believer who sits there and critically goes through and thinks through their beliefs and questions everything, whether they still come to those beliefs or not and they still agree with them, than somebody who, honestly believes everything Richard Dawkins says without ever considering whether it might be true or false. Now, you have been including the group as a whole in decision making, right? You engage your members in their opinions and on their speaking events, their charity work, and group policy. You have been delegating responsibilities to members who show promise as potential leaders. You have been nurturing them as potential movers and shakers while taking further stress off of yourself. Nurturing includes giving shy prospects responsibility by asking them to step up. Ambitious types are not the only people who can add fresh energy and ideas to a group. Yeesh, what a year. Here's what you can do to prepare for the actual transition. You have held an election and your successor has been chosen. This election took place, ideally, before the final meetings of the semester. This is when you should be taking stock of which goals were met and which goals were exceeded and which ones did not even come close to being accomplished. Look over your progress reports from your officers and see what went well and why. Learn from your failures and make a checklist to address how to succeed in the future. Further, reprioritize responsibilities and goals based on any changing circumstances for the upcoming semester. Have a final meeting with the president and officer-elect to go over what you have done over the year. Prepare all documentation and give them advice, or give them any advice you have on surviving as a leader. Give them your contact information. Stick around, and then take your place as an elder in the group and breathe a sigh of relief. Now, here are some final thoughts. How the SSA at UNLV handles regime change is probably different from how all other groups do it. We are constantly having elections. Leadership transitions happen every semester. Once you're a president or an officer, you have a term of 1 year, 2 semesters to 2 semesters. To continue as president, you have to be reelected. The benefits from this system are as follows. Former leaders are still around to give advice to the new leaders and help them meet goals. Moreover, former leaders are still active members of the group. They can be contacted as often as a weekly basis. It prevents stagnation in the group by providing fresh leaders who can bring in innovation and new ideas. And it greatly reduces burnout and apathy. It motivates members by giving them constant opportunities to make their mark on the group and help reinforce the idea that the group is bigger than any one member. And lastly, if a leader is ineffectual, they are only in charge for 2 semesters. They can run for another position better suited to their strengths, or they can step down entirely. So, here's the wrap up. Consider implementing leadership transitions more frequently than every graduation. This prioritizes the group over any one member and has helped increase our members' morale. Also consider having at least the aforementioned amount of officers, even if you only have enough members to fill those positions. This will form the foundation of your group and increase your longevity by helping reduce the amount of stress placed on any one leader from the beginning. Any questions? Yes.
So, I'm announcing this for the benefit of people in the back rows because
as I saw, I had 5 minutes and just started going. Yeah.
No, I am currently the president of another student org on campus, and we just went from having a 3-person executive board to having a 5 or 6 person executive board. And I'm not sure because I don't necessarily know all of them as personal friends anymore, and because it's so much larger, what are your tips for creating cohesiveness and being able to keep everybody on the same page among such a big group with so many different tasks going on?
Well, the way UNLV does it is we make sure that we have one vision. This is where your core values come into play. You need to know what the mission of your group is. Now, I am aware, obviously, because I've interacted with your group, spectrum. It's an LGBT queer group. They promote activism in the group. What you need to do is you need to find out what unites you guys as a whole and you need to work towards that goal, because the only way you guys are going to stay all on the same page is if you all know what the group is for. That's the most important thing I can hammer home. You have to find an esprit de corps. You have to find a vision, and you all have to go for it. Moreover, that'll stay with your group longer than any one leader.
To kind of play on what you were just saying, with such a large e-board, how do you find it most appropriate to get the goals you want to when there's going to be obviously a larger group of ideals amongst the group, because there are going to be more people with ideas?
1, facilitate open communication. Open communication is always important. You guys can agree on as opposed to, and learn that differences aren't necessarily a problem. The more opinions you have, the more information you have, the more tools you have to get your goals accomplished.
What's the largest stumbling block that transitional leaders should watch out for during the transition? So the person that's leaving.
Yeah, the person that's leaving. Often it's really hard, I find, to let go of your old position. This is where ego comes into play. UNLV doesn't have as much of an issue with this because often somebody transitions from that old position will run for a new one because we have so many, and it lasts for such a certain term. But people learn that this is my job. As far as I go, I find it very, very hard to bite my tongue, just form into old habits and step up and be like, hey guys, let's go. Whereas James Kelsey, this individual here, is now the current VP, and I have to shut up and let him run the show. It's his job.
We're from a community college, a 2-year college, with an immensely fast turnover. So what do we do, as usually happens when at the end of the year, most of the membership of the club is gutted, and we actually have fewer members starting out the next year than there are officer positions?
For smaller groups with higher turnovers, the best thing I can recommend is maintain social ties. There is no reason when somebody graduates that they can't still help out, they can't still be around. Maybe they can't, whatever your school bylaws are, maybe they can't be an official member of the student organization, but there's no reason why they can't come up to social groups. There's no reason why they can't help out with events. There is no reason to lose elders, believe me. Don't do it. You're losing valuable information. Not to be a nerd, you're losing lore. You're losing stories and lore from your group if you sit there and you chase them away. And there isn't an expiration date on being an atheist. There isn't an expiration date on being an agnostic. There's no reason to lose these resources.